did you get your information from that dairy is healthy?
Just in the last couple years from the TV. So no, I have not looked into it. I've just kind of taken their word for it. They're not going to say, well, I shouldn't say they're not going to say something on TV that's not true.
Why is it good? Well, it's good for the bones, teeth, everything. Great food.
Strong bones, and what's that commercial? Milk? Yeah, I mean, what is that? Milk? Got milk?
It's called the dairy industry. They have a very large lobby. They spend a lot of money.
Why do we believe that milk is good for us, though?
We're taught as little kids.
Schools.
We're taught by as little kids that it's good for us. Without proof, kids accept what their parents say, what their doctors say, and you know, they usually don't question it.
Why do you think it's healthy?
Well, because you've been told that all your life, you know. Everybody tells you it's healthy.
I mean, they used to believe that the earth was flat, and everybody believed that.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly some crazy person came out and said, no, you know, the world is round. So if everybody believes that milk is healthy for you, but if one person came and told you,
Well, that's their opinion.
So you find it natural that a human drinks milk after its infancy?
Yeah, it's probably better that they have their mother's milk, but cow's milk is all right, I guess.
The medical specialist stated, "It is my opinion that the ears, nose, throat, and accessory organs of all participating subjects examined by me were not adversely affected in the 6 months period by smoking the cigarettes provided." Remember this report and buy Chesterfields, regular or king size.
But they wouldn't say that milk is good for you if it really wasn't. And again, that's what we feed our babies.
This kind of deception is not like damaging your TV or your car. I mean, these are your children. These are your husbands and wives and your mothers and fathers that are being hurt by this dishonesty. That's the problem. They should be ashamed of themselves. This is the Wild West. The dairy industry can do whatever they want. They got the money, they've got the political control, there's nobody out there to put them in line, and so that's what they do.
From 1988 to 1993, there were over 2,700 articles dealing with milk recorded in the medicine archives. None of the 2,700 researchers spoke of milk as an excellent food, as we have been told by the dairy industry. Instead, intestinal bleeding, bovine leukemia, AIDS-like virus, asthma, childhood diabetes, heart disease, anemia, arthritis, allergic reactions, and cancer were the focus. If all this is really true, why haven't we heard about it?
They think dairy is health food. They look at a block of cheese and they think strong bones. They don't think glob of fat. So psychologically, they eat dairy guiltlessly, and they eat large amounts without any reservation. So if I was going to give one powerful message to a patient, to a community, to a country, to a world, is get off the dairy. You'll improve your health more than getting off the meat.
The fact that the animal proteins are highly represented in dairy products will cause negative calcium balances for people, and it'll actually be the cause of osteoporosis and things of that nature. So, but these are things that people don't understand. So it's a very, very clever way. You need fat, you need protein, you need carbohydrate, you need calcium. Yes, there are things in milk that you need, but you don't need milk to get them.
Well, growing up in school, you know, in grammar school, we were exposed to cow's milk as being a source of calcium and nutrition. So the food pyramid is wrong. I know that now. The ADA food pyramid I don't agree with. And
Do you know who made that pyramid?
yeah, the companies that produce the products that they mention on the pyramid.
Do you get the feeling you're being screwed?
And USDA, their principal interest is protecting the livelihood of the livestock and dairy industry in this country. They also are the ones who then take this report and put out a very practical message for the public called Dietary Guidelines for Americans.
When it comes to having food to eat or housing so you don't have to live on the street.
They're telling Americans what to eat based supposedly on health, but they also have a mandate in law that they must promote American agricultural products, even the ones that are unhealthy for you.
They say let the market run the show and let the people go to hell.
Conflicts of interest statements are important, very important, almost sacred. And that's supposed to be open to the American public. It's just readily available so that everything's transparent. That's the story. Well, Dr. Bernard's organization went to the USA and said, we'd like to see the conflicts of interest statements on these 11 people who were on that panel. Because he knew, and I knew, and some others knew, that there were biases there. And we wanted to see how well it was stated on their personal conflicts of interest statements. The USDA would not give them those conflicts of interest statements, even though it's a law that is supposed to be transparent.
It's always get their way. Whatever they have planned, we never get a say.
The Department of Agriculture and the people that they had appointed to this committee had industry ties. Out of 11 people on the committee to decide what Americans are supposed to eat, 6 of the 11 had financial relationships with either the dairy industry, the meat industry, or the egg industry.
We're cutting services to keep their profits maximized. Now children starve while billionaires get subsidized.
Considering, as they made up the guidelines, was not accessible by the public, and that it was done in violation of federal law.
The introduction of dairy products, the introduction of milk, it's forced upon indigenous communities.
My body system is not used to cow milk, and there's a reaction that ends up happening in my body where a tremendous amount of bloating happens, and it really has impact on my system.
The mothers that are breastfeeding, right before that they, within 4 weeks of delivering a child, then they will be enrolled in what they call a voucher program. And that voucher program is WIC. And the theory behind that is to make sure that the mother has enough nourishment through the dairy products.
Food assistance programs, unfortunately, have been used not for the health of the people who are there to benefit, but they're used as a dumping ground for agricultural commodities. Dairy prices are low, the government buys them up. They put them in prisons, they put them in schools, they go into other food assistance programs.
There's a lot of families that are on the Women, Infant, Children program. And I myself was also a participant of that program when my children were young babies.
If you look at the Native Americans, they have this enormous prevalence of obesity, an enormous prevalence of diabetes, which is taking an incredible toll on that population. And what are the foods that they're given to eat? Not traditional beans and corn and grains that would be normal and that would be healthy. No, it's milk. It's cheese. It's high-fat, high-sugar, high-calorie things that are making them sick.
With that voucher that they gave you, did they allow you to buy vegetables and fruit? I mean, just basic foods that you cook and that are nourishable?
No, they just let us buy like cheese and then eggs.
The school lunch program to exist, and the WIC program, and food sold and made available in hospitals, I might add. Those are three big programs, big federal programs. Those programs are offering food that are nothing more than the garbage from the dairy and livestock industry.
National Dairy Council is obviously interested in selling milk, so even for individuals who complain of indigestion or other stomach cramps, other stomach problems, the Dairy Council wants them to keep trying to drink milk.
And they do drink the milk, and then they go to class after they've had their milk at breakfast and had their milk at lunch. They're not feeling good. They're going to be squirmy in their chairs. They're not going to be able to concentrate. They're not going to do as well in school. So in a way, it's like we're setting our kids up, those children who don't tolerate milk well, to do poorly in school.
Lactose is a sugar. It's milk sugar.
It's glucose attached to galactose.
It's what we call a disaccharide.
And when you're a little baby who's nursing, you have an enzyme that breaks those apart, and you can absorb them. But after the age of weaning, normally you lose that enzyme. A genetic mutation that's carried by about 85% of Caucasians has allowed them to digest this milk into adulthood, which is not the case for other races and certainly not the case for other species. Lactose intolerance is totally normal. It's a sign that you ought to get weaned.
You consume a sugar, which is the lactose, that the bowel cannot digest because it doesn't have the lactase enzyme. What happens is that sugar goes through your small intestine where it's supposed to be digested, ends up in the large intestine where bacteria digest it. They produce gases, which give you gas and cramps, and just the sugar being in the bowel causes you to get diarrhea because of water that's drawn into the bowel.
Don't get me wrong, sick as a dog.
Dairy cows, as opposed to beef cows, the job of a beef cow is to produce calves that that become steak on your plate. In order for a cow to give milk, she has to give birth to a baby calf. And that starts the lactation process. A calf goes and lives in its own little house.
Okay.
And basically that is to prevent disease. If the calf stays with the mama, it can be contaminated with some of the manure or anything and can get Johne's disease or can get other bacteria or, just be exposed. So you want the calf to be in a clean environment. And the mama can't stay with the calf because she's got the milk. She's got all this milk she has to give. A cow can have an infection in her udder, which is called mastitis. So the somatic cell count relates to the incidence of mastitis. So if the cow has a low somatic cell count, and somatic cells normally occur in the milk. White blood cells are everywhere, right? And so they're in the bloodstream, they come into the milk, and they exist.
White blood cells are pus cells. And in analyses of the dairy that's being sold, they have 350, 400,000 pus cells per cc, along with 25,000 bacteria per cc is found in regular milk that you buy in the stores.
White blood cells are present just naturally to help the baby cow, but humans, when they're consuming cow's milk, that's really not a concern. And what it ends up really being is just basically pus that is present in the milk. It doesn't really help our immune systems. It's meant for a baby cow's immune system. So that's just something else that we don't need.
Milk is really a byproduct of blood.
Okay.
I don't want to freak you out or say something bad, but where does milk come from? The cows, it's a normal process that the cow secretes the oxytocin and then the blood.
Like any other industry, they have to meet, they impact the environment, like the air, like the water and the soil, for example.
From here to the groundwater, we're almost 300 feet deep. So, but that's one of our constant issues, is to make sure we don't do anything to pollute, to contaminate the groundwater or surface water.
When we talk about global warming, we tend to talk a lot about CO2. But there is a gas that is far more dangerous.
It's methane. The cattle industry is contributing, a gas that has 23 times the power to create a greenhouse effect that does the CO2 from cars.
Dairy industry, on one side, it's a big economic generator.
Animal agriculture has grown enormously. People consume 5 times as much animal products today as they did 50 years ago. Our consumption will double again in the next 50 years. Already, the atmosphere we're breathing has more than twice as much methane as it did a century ago. Just imagine how bad they'll be if we don't start doing something about it.
And the contamination to the air pollution.
The one animal that's the most powerful emitter of methane are dairy cows. They need to eat an enormous amount of food to produce all that. According to the UN, it's a bigger source than all the cars and trucks and planes and trains put together. 70% of formerly forested Amazon is now being used for pasture land, and more is being used to raise crops to feed the animals. So this is one of the biggest sources of deforestation in the world.
We have been going to the Caribbean, to Central America, Southeast Asia, and places like that, to cut down forest, not just to get the wood, but to create pasture land for cattle.
I have not had one sip of milk for 20 years. I haven't broken any bones for years.
When they say milk has calcium, everybody needs calcium, they leave the consumer to make the connection that therefore milk is a good source of calcium, which is, of course, absolutely not true.
Calcium is important. We need calcium, right? Dairy's got the most calcium in any food, almost. Therefore, we need dairy. That's the simple-minded conclusion. The higher the dairy consumption in different countries, the higher is the risk for osteoporosis. It's not the other way around. Like the dairy industry, I mean, they've been getting away with that yarn for quite a number of years now.
And they found that the countries where they were consuming the most milk, the countries where they're consuming the most calcium, had the highest hip fracture rates. It's actually opposite of what you would think.
At Harvard, the Nurses' Health Study tracked women, more than 70,000 women for over 18 years. What they found is those who drank the most milk had absolutely no protection against hip fractures at all. The idea that calcium is going to build strong bones is a myth.
Over and over and over again, they do these studies, they put more calcium in the system, and it doesn't help the bones.
And if we learned about nutrition, what were the factors that cause us to lose calcium, and what foods we could eat to have calcium from a healthier source, people would be much better off and their bones would be much stronger too.
When you consume animal protein, such as found in dairy products or meats or eggs, you pull calcium from your bones and excrete it in your urine.
It's the protein in our dairy-based foods that makes it more difficult for us to keep the calcium that we're getting from dairy products in our bodies.
What happens is when you're consuming the animal protein, your blood becomes acidic and your body reacts by pulling calcium from the bones as a kind of buffer to neutralize the blood.
Had 14 or 15 kidney stone attacks,
and which will convince you not to drink as much milk as you'd like to drink.
Changes take place throughout the body, including the kidneys. And as a result, they lose that bone mass, that bone material into the kidney system, which precipitates kidney stones, and you have an overall effect of essentially urinating your bones in the toilet.
But although they still say it's good for your bones and teeth, I don't know what good for, you know, what are they talking about?
I've learned in my training that the milk helps the brain development.
How does the milk help
the brain development? Helps their skills and learning their ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, and colors and stuff.
When you feed cow's milk earlier, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, even 12 months, you're taking a chance the child's going to lose iron from occult gastrointestinal bleeding. And because milk doesn't contain iron as much, and it's not as absorbable as it is from breast milk now, the potential is going to be there for iron deficiency when they're young. And iron deficiency in a young child can have effects on reducing their intelligence. And that reduction in intelligence can be there permanently for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I put this
on the potato.
It's now 30 pounds per person per year, thanks to government programs. You don't actually need any other explanation for why Americans are so fat these days.
And I just had a 5 bypass heart attack a month ago, you know. I had 5 bypasses done and I had 8 blockages. And I'd say it was my lifestyle of eating that and hereditary. You know, part of it's hereditary, but it's what you eat.
One of the main factors is a high diet high in animal products, especially animal products that are high in saturated fat. And as I said earlier, that the biggest contributor of saturated fat in the American dietary landscape is dairy products, cheese and butter.
Dairy products are a rich source of cholesterol and saturated fat, which are the two things you want to avoid if you're at risk for heart disease, or even if you want to prevent heart disease altogether.
If you look at what's in milk and other dairy products, it's a recipe for a heart attack. It's got an awful lot of fat in it, mostly saturated fat, the kind that raises cholesterol.
So if there was one food to wipe out to prevent heart disease, that would be cheese and butter. But when you have heart disease, you'd be crazy to eat pouring cheese and butter on your foods. But, you know, go to a hospital and see what they feed them. See what they feed people coming out of bypass surgery. See what they bring to you when you're in a hospital. They bring you all kinds of high saturated fat dairy products.
We are committed to having cheap food in this country. We in America want cheap food. We have a cheap food. To make a profit that would sustain a lifestyle of this is what I want to do, you have to milk a few more cows.
I think the cows that the milk comes from are pumped full of steroids and hormones and everything else, and it's in our milk and our meat and the foods we eat and all that you know, and we're ingesting it. It's not good for you, but it's good. I mean, it sure goes good with chocolate cake.
costs me money, of course, to use it, right? It makes your cows sicker and stuff. When, you know, you have more problems, you have more, you know, ailments on your cows because you're pushing them so hard. And the consumer doesn't like it. You know, you can say it's already in milk, and you can tell them, the consumer, till you're blue in the face, but when you have a syringe there,
It doesn't look
it's
good.
a drug.
Exactly.
Anytime you add hormones to something that's going to be consumed by humans, you're going to affect them in some way.
If you give them hormones to produce more and more milk, their udders can get distended, they get mastitis, which is then treated with drugs.
So let's recap. Cows that are injected with RBGH have higher levels of IGF-1, which is associated with cancer. The use of the hormone also increases infections in the cow, which are treated with antibiotics and are found in the milk.
We worked on this a total of about 27 years. You know, and we did many, many experiments, dozens of experiments over the years, and we asked all kinds of questions. First off, is it really true that animal protein, in this case cow's milk protein, that it can increase cancer? Well, we established that point in spades. It was absolutely true. It was dramatic. And then we went to some other questions, like, for example, how does it work? You'd like to know those kind of things to get more confidence. And the more we looked at a very fundamental level, biochemical level, we could find out this was changed, this was changed, this was changed. A whole lot of things was just sort of going wrong to create this cancer phenomenon. And then we got to a point where we could actually turn on and turn off cancer development just by giving them cow's milk protein or taking it away. That was dramatic.
Insulin-like growth factor, which is a hormone that mama cow puts in the milk for baby cow to grow, and human mothers do the same thing for in human breast milk.
Because milk is designed to make things grow. And so the mother cow is putting growth factors and hormones and nutrients into the milk to cause changes in the calf's body that make the calf's cells grow.
When you're an adult, you don't need any more growth hormone. Growth hormone basically is looking around for something to do. If it finds a non-self cell or a mutated cell, then it can act on those cancerous cells and increase growth of cancer cells.
Because when we're done growing, we don't need to grow anymore, and so but our bodies still think that something needs to grow.
All of a sudden, here's cow's milk protein, the most sacred of all nutrients, I think, as we've been educated. It causes cancer. It's ridiculous. And the information we got on cow's milk protein would make it the most relevant, significant chemical carcinogen we consume. Now, the question is, you know, why doesn't the public get to know this?
We know that milk is associated with increased risk of prostate cancer. We know that milk is associated with increased risk of ovarian cancer. We know that milk is associated with higher levels of IGF-1, which increases your risk of breast cancer. We know all these things, but the public doesn't get that information.
Who controls what the government promotes is all based on social and political concerns and economic concerns. It's not based on science.
Let's just think about that for a minute. Milk helps you lose weight. Okay, you take this, we'll talk about the data, but let's just think about that for a second. You take this food we'll call it a food, that is designed by mammalian mothers for their babies to help a tiny mammal grow into a much larger mammal. This is a food that's designed to make other mammals get bigger.
It's hard to think that this is anything other than nonsense. And yet it's sparked an enormous multi-million-dollar ad campaign to try to get people to buy milk.
Research papers in the scientific journals that show that their top scientists realize this is fraud.
There's been about 50 randomized controlled trials that have looked at the effect of either dairy or calcium on weight loss. 45 of those 50 studies have shown no effect of dairy or calcium on weight loss. 2 have shown weight gain, and 3 have shown weight loss. The 3 that showed weight loss, all by this one guy who's been funded by the dairy industry.
His name is Michael Zemmel. He's in Tennessee. And other researchers have put this theory to the very same test. And they haven't been able to find the same result. They find that if anything, milk doesn't do anything, or it might actually cause you to gain more weight.
The question is, you should give up the dairy group. You'll get much better results than giving up the meat group. And the reason is dairy is basically liquid meat. It has essentially the same macronutrient properties, the same amount of fat, cholesterol, protein, lack of fiber, and so on. They're very similar in their nutritional makeup, but dairy has some extra problems, allergy problems, autoimmune diseases that they cause.
If I now drank milk or had a product with any kind of dairy product, tomorrow morning I would wake up with swelling and a great deal of pain.
It causes an autoimmune response in me that makes me ache all over. I get like an arthritic reaction where my joints start aching, and so if I have dairy over 2 or 3 day period, a little lasagna here or a little vegetarian pizza there or just various things like that, I begin to feel like I'm going to become totally crippled.
The way it manifested in me was that my face was constantly broken out.
Said he didn't know whether going on a non-dairy diet would cure the migraines, but it certainly ought to be worth the effort, and I never had another migraine.
Milk creates an inordinate amount of phlegm. I had a pretty juicy nose when I drank milk. I didn't connect the two.
My stepdaughter, she actually had asthma real bad. She was hospitalized for 3 weeks out in Philadelphia. And the doctors couldn't figure it out. She still has asthma, but we went to one doctor and they actually said, stay away from all milk and dairy products.
We know that, if you do the right kind of diet, you can actually probably save at least 80% of all the illness in this country, serious illness and otherwise. I happen to believe it's more closer to 90, 95%. You can actually cure disease this way. There's a huge effect. But are we addressing it as a society? No, not at all.
Well, they diagnosed me as having bronchitis, asthmatic bronchitis. And so I was on theophylline, and then they developed the time-release Theodore, and I'd be on toxic levels of, it's either 400 or 600 milligrams 4 times a day, which is the most that you can take. And yet my blood level would not be at the amount that they wanted, and they kept blaming it on me. It's your problem, it's your fault.
We give them a diabetic medication, we give them a high blood pressure lowering drug, we give them a cholesterol lowering drug. We're giving them permission to continue to eat the same diet style that caused the problem to begin with. So the inevitable consequence is this disease, the underlying disease, has to get worse as they continue to follow the same diet that caused the problem to begin with. We're selling them out. we didn't give them the possibility, we didn't give them the knowledge where they now have the possibility to reverse their diseases and live longer and save their life. That's malpractice. We're not adequately informing the people what they can do. We're just giving them a drug.
And getting herself in such a mess that now is really driving the whole healthcare cost problem.
And I met some people that knew about food allergies and about milk and other things that were bad for you. So I stopped drinking milk and some other things and cleaned up my diet and did a lot of different things for several years. And I didn't have any more problems. I didn't have to take any medication.
It seems like milk companies pretty desperate.
So I don't see get broccoli posters up here.
I think the ads in the cafeteria is, the smartest form of advertising ever. I think that if you're trying to get people to buy milk, to drink milk, that you put it in the schools, and the kids see it, and then when they're adults, they're hearing all the time is milk is healthy, milk makes you grow, milk makes your bones strong. So of course they're gonna be feeding it to their kids, and I don't know if anybody really knows when they're drinking it what it does.
I am cow, hear me moo. I weigh twice as much as you, and I look good on the barbecue. Yogurt, curd, cream, cheese, and butters made from liquid from my udders. I am cow, hear me moo. I am cow, eating grass, methane gas comes out my ass.